Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by NextGen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman, and today with me, I have the pleasure of having Ryan Slabaugh. Did I say that right? Okay.
You did, yes.
Think Regeneration. Ryan, so pleased to have you here.
It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, well, I think it's a really interesting topic. There's so much going on in it, and it needs some clarity. So I'm excited to have you on to help me better understand, as well as our listeners and our viewers. So let's kick it off with maybe you just telling us what Think Regeneration is.
Well, we are a new 501c3 nonprofit. We started late last year. We've got a board of directors of farmers and ranchers around the country who are doing different levels and different types of regenerative systems. We started this organization to help identify the different projects going on around the country and bring them the resources to accelerate their projects so that we can get this movement going at a little higher clip.
Wow.
Along the way, we put out a lot of information too. A lot of people stumble us across through our blog and through our media that we put out there as well. But there's a lot to talk about in this space.
There is. And, you mentioned that you provide resources to these folks that are doing this. So can you talk a little bit about that? What kind of resources are we talking about? Because there's so many different kinds.
It's one of the unique things that we really identified is every hub or every research place or every farm of activity that is happening in the regenerative space has a different need. Right. And so when we're in Washington State, working with the conservation district their need is a track of education. So we're working with them to bring in the right scientists and teachers and farmers in the region who are already doing advanced biological systems to provide the information around cover cropping, soil health, crop resistance, pesticide resistance, weed resistance, those types of things that we can do naturally. In Arizona, we have a very talented farm and rancher, and Dr. Yadi Wang down there, who's running Oatman Flats Ranch, and but he's also very isolated in the desert in Arizona. So we're helping identify the right companies and researchers to help support their regenerative project there, as well as build a food chain there that they can actually sell into in the Tucson, Phoenix area. They've done so much work there, so it's really helping them just find the little gaps that we can help fill there. We're also going to be producing an event on their farm later on this year. That's more of a think tank that will be having some recommendations for how to do all this in the region as well. So those are just a couple examples of what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And they're pretty, varied, right? So the pendulum kind of swings in terms of the resources that you're providing. And I'm curious, what is your expertise initially that you're able to provide all these different kinds of resources?
I've got a funny little skill set, but I started my life as a newspaper editor, and I worked in communities working as a community newspaper editor. They were a lot of more environmentally sensitive areas, so that we were covering a lot of environmental issues. I got offered a job to run Acres USA in 2016, which was a soil health publishing and event company. And that was just connecting me with this wonderful network of just unbelievable early adopters of regenerative agriculture who really took me under their wing and taught me what this was about and the connections between soil health and human health, the connection between soil health and peace in the world. These were wildly ambitious thinkers who were waiting for the world to catch up with them. And that's really what's exciting about this regenerative movement is it's a mindset that these farmers these early adopters have discovered because of their close attachment to the land that we see the whole world being able to learn from.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's so amazing to now be able to have people catching up, because sometimes when you're too far ahead, it's hard for people to see that vision with you, right? But people are catching up, mostly, I think, through education. And so before we go further, I just would love for you to explain in your mind what regenerative agriculture is, because that's what we're talking about in so many of these instances.
It's at the risk of defining it, it's really a mindset that early adopters and farmers have, and it's a love of life that I think a lot of people in the world don't even know is possible, and that we're translating into the food supply. and how we look at our food and how we look at our farming and how we look at our agriculture. It's a paradigm shift. And I want to make sure I underline that this is not a new law that needs to be passed. This is not a small change that we're looking at. This is a multi-generational mindset shift, excuse me, that is dependent upon us. Every farmer is going to have different systems. They're going to have different tactics that's going to be building our food supply. But we really want to set a vision and a wildly ambitious goal, to go back to that term, around a food supply that decreases cancer rates, that makes Alzheimer's very rare, where diabetes starts to become eradicated in our society, where mental health issues and gut health issues are being taken care of naturally. I think there's a whole potential here that those who have been a part of this see that we can actually solve these problems and we can actually do this. And that's what's really exciting about the regenerative movement. This is possible, and we're going to make this happen. It's going to take generations, but it really comes down to this mindset change of loving life and doing everything we can to protect it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's, a lot of it is changing the narrative for people and the way that they think, like you said, a mind shift. So if people change the way they're thinking and recognize the impact that food and soil has on their health, wellness, and the environment, I think we're just one step closer to getting there. But I think that's the first step, and I think that's still a struggle. But I'm happy to say that I've spoken to a variety of people that are creating products and now doing clinical trials for these products to see, are they working, are they not working? Not so they can be, replace medicine, but so that if we can live a healthier life, if we can eat healthier, we can just do as much as we can to prevent any illness.
That's really
I'm excited about that. We have a whole new series coming up, which is going to be investigating this and talking about the trials and trying to support the efficacy around the impact of food on our health and wellness. Because for me, similar to you, I want to create change. I want to change the way that people look at it, from health institutions to the government. So that's a longer conversation, but I think that, we're very aligned in the way that we're thinking. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but hopefully we can see, some change in our lifetime. I still have at least 50 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's I can't remember if it was John Kemp who said this, or Ronaldo Has American. One of those guys on stage a couple of years ago, I was listening to talk, and they said, our ability to see this happen will be directly correlated to the vision, the clarity of the vision that we put out there. And so I think that's really,
Yes.
that's really where where we are at in this movement overall, is just making sure folks really have a clear vision that, and I think the early adopters, and we're talking folks who started this in the 60s and, talking about this long time ago. And, they got frustrated because it never really got into a paradigm shift, right? When the organic movement happened and we got organic certification and we got this happened, the disease rate still increased, right? The extraction from the industry still did not go to farmers. It went to, the brands with the biggest marketing companies. And, and I think that's the fundamental opportunity we have with regenerative agriculture, is to look at a lot of our history and to look at a lot of the things that we've done and just make slight changes and slight fixes that we can improve on. And that will have massive ripple effects.
And I think the more that we work to educate and inform people, the more people will demand and really require people to make that shift. But
that's it.
Without education, without information, people don't know. And if you don't know, you can't ask, or you can't demand it. So I think that education is really key here too.
Yeah. I without getting too technical, when we present to groups, we talk about the difference between linear math and nonlinear math as being a key fundamental in understanding what we're talking about. That when you add 1 + 1 = 2, you can run that equation a million different times and you're going to get the same answer, right? 1 + 1 = 2. That's not how nature works. And that's not how natural growing systems works. And so you actually have to run the scenario, thousands of times, right? And see thousands of different answers to be able to plot what's actually going to happen and the reality of what's going to happen. And that's what nonlinear math is. And that's what we're asking, our growers who are moving to regenerative systems, is to get away from the N + P + K = a crop and start thinking about a nonlinear system that they're building that actually regenerates itself, right? And that's where the regenerative term comes from, is this ability for it to work without our inputs, right? And without our efforts. And that's a really hard thing to quantify. That's a really hard thing to put on a spreadsheet. It's a really hard thing to map out and predict. But that's where that mindset comes in. It's so critical. It's just understanding that you can do the same thing 10 years in a row in your fields, and you will get 10, different responses.
Yeah, exactly. And my question to you is that as you're doing this and as you're talking to people, are people open to learning about this and making the changes? What kind of challenges do you experience, and what kind of responses are you getting?
It's a good question. We're really careful not to go into an environment where people aren't ready to change or don't want to change. That's not really what we're there to do, is to go in and tell people that they're doing things wrong and they need to change. We're seeing just so much momentum of people already volunteering and saying, I need to explore a different system for my farm, and I need to look at things differently. I now have Roundup resistant weeds, so that's not going to work anymore. What do I do now? Now I've got a new market that we can reach around regeneration. Or now I've got some new education. I understand how cover crops work now. So how do I build this into the system? So that's a lot of the farmers and ranchers that we're working with, are the people who have taken that first step already. They've set some real goals around that. We find that the pinch points come around glyphosate use, right, is still a big conversation in this movement. How can we help those large scale growers take a step away from some of those products, or use less of those products at the very least? There's a lot of nervousness around that. And so that's what we talk about, mindset change. I'm not here to tell you, here's the exact product. There's a lot of wonderful agronomists out there that you can work with and do that. But there's without name dropping too much, there's a farmer in Wisconsin named Gary Zimmer, who's an early adopter of biological farming, and is just a great instructor out there. He's taught thousands and thousands and thousands of farmers. And he's got a sign in his barn, and it says, if you teach a farmer the why, they'll figure out the how. And that was life-changing when I walked into his barn and saw that. And that was really the light bulb that went off for Think Regeneration, is going, you know what? The soil health experts, they're doing such a wonderful job of taking care of farmers and ranchers and helping them connect with the agronomy they need. We need more of them, don't get me wrong, but you can never really trust it if you don't have the why behind it.
Yeah, I also think it's kind of like you could take a horse to water, but you can't make them do it. So I think it's kind of along those same lines, right? You need people to be curious.
Yeah. There's we've surveyed some farmers and ranchers about what's keeping them from adopting these practices, and they're real human relationship issues. I mean, some of it is economics, don't get me wrong, right, but some of it is, my landlord and I don't know how to have that conversation, or I'm not sure how to actually approach the bank and get a loan for that specific tool, or I don't have a command of this system well enough to actually speak to it and advocate for it. That's a lot where a lot of folks are in this overall. And so that's where a lot of what we do is get them together, and we just share that information with them and say, this is why you as a family farmer feel so much negative economic pressure. There's real reasons for that. That's not made up and imaginary. There's economic policy, there's markets that are closed to them. There's an actual real intent to get less farmers in this country, and has been for 60 years. So when we present them with that ability to just understand that and see them go, oh, that's why. There's a real freedom and liberation that comes from that experience of having somebody from the outside go, this is why it's so hard. And so, that's really what we're here for, is to help farmers and ranchers. Anybody who grows food is an amazing person. Anybody who takes care of the land, I've got all the respect for in the world. So we're just here to help everybody who wants to move this direction have the softest landing ever, and understand that there is a growing network of people who are willing to help them. That's one of the things that I just absolutely think is essential to this industry, is the fact that abundance is the underlying goal, not scarcity. And we talked about education, we're talking about information, we're talking about best practice sharing. So I've never met a regenerative farmer with this mindset who, if you've asked him, show me everything you do, including your books, who hasn't said, absolutely, I will do that. And that's the trust I want to give the folks. If you're listening and going, is this a community I want to work with? It's a community that, once you find, will take good care of you if you let them.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm curious about those farmers that maybe are not ready to participate in this, right? Yeah. And what you find when you're talking to them, what are some of their biggest concerns or issues around changing the conversation for themselves, to be able to embrace this as the next steps for a better future.
It's scary thinking about losing your subsidy program, right? When you've had a guarantee coming from the government to say, if you grow X, Y, or Z and you do it this way, we'll give you a check no matter what happens and help protect you. That's a really good business model,
Right.
to have that support there. So to go to them and go, let's do something different is fundamentally like a real challenge, because they're going to go, wait, I've got all this security wrapped up in these systems, and you're telling me that I have to now do something different. And I think that's really what we tried. So that we try to show them the economics. It's actually, okay, what if we told you could spend $1 million less on fertilizer, and we've got people in this industry doing that. That gets their attention, right? If we talk about the carbon markets, carbon markets are a dangerous conversation at some point, because a lot of folks are thinking that's the end destination. As soon as I get my carbon credit, I've done a regenerative system. That's not exactly it, but it is helping bring people into this movement to say, what are they talking about? How can I participate in this? And the carbon markets are depending on tactics that work in regenerative systems, like cover cropping, livestock integration, and some of these other common practices that we see happening. So it's all good. It's just a matter of making sure that we don't stop too soon at the work to be done.
Yeah, and I can see the challenge that some folks might have adopting this, because that's scary when you're giving that up,
Absolutely.
right? People need a paycheck.
Absolutely.
They want to make sure that they can afford to do this. So
I would advocate for $1 trillion moonshot for our food supply, where we are giving farmers and ranchers 10-year forgivable loans to move their systems into natural ecosystems and prove that they are storing carbon and prove that they're creating nutritious food that is going into the food supply and feeding us. And if they can do that, they get the money and the capital and the security to change their systems, move to this direction, and have a healthier farm ecosystem. I know a lot of people that I run that strategy, that idea by. They're like, absolutely, I'd be all in. So there is a real
sounds great. When are you going to work on this? Are you working on this now?
Well, that's why we do these types of conversations and get on these podcasts, right? Is to help, plant these seeds out there. And if there's others that think it's a good idea, reach out to me, send me a note. How do we build these kind of concepts? There's groups like Land Trust that are working on these types of bills in DC to really help incentivize, these programs going on. And I like it about Land Trust is they require a Republican and a Democrat to co-sign on everything they do, and so it's really a bipartisan effort to get these programs off the ground.
Well, now where are you in this? Like, have you started to make waves there, or trying to make inroads there yet to change this and create that opportunity?
I think we got to build the case, right? That we got to
Right.
create this vision. I think we're creating the vision first before we build the policy. And I think that's really what we're working on right now, is through our think tanks and through our discussions and through the events that we'll be having in 9 or 10 different states this year. We'll be working with groups of farmers and ranchers and looking at, we'll be doing some introspection, making sure everybody understands why they're doing this. But then really we'll be pivoting to what problems do we need to solve collectively. And we look at climate change as a good example of where early on, when we understood that something was happening in the environment and something was happening with warming Earth in regions, and fortunately warming poles, when one scientist was on stage, it was easy to ignore, right? And it was like, and I was in the media at the time, and we actually had to go cover it, where we interviewed the scientist that said climate change is real, and then we had to go find a climate change denier to be fair and balanced, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
until we had 99% of all scientists get together, organize, and say, these are the fundamental truths that we believe in that are happening, and this research behind it, that changed the game for us in media, where all of a sudden it repositioned the science behind the statements, if that made sense, and helped educate us as at the explainer level of what we were talking about overall. And so that's really, I think, where we are, is in that, we're still creating that collective vision and getting everybody to kind of buy into this. Again, I'm not talking about everybody doing cover crops or any specific tactic, but really this vision that we can create a healthier food supply. And there's a real way to do this. I think if we can get that vision out there and show the models that are out there already working and talk about how we connect these models, then a policy is going to appear around that. And I think farmers and ranchers have propped up this country's economy for so long, and it's time that we pay them back a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. And to give them the opportunity to do things in a better way, without giving up security, without being scared that they're not going to be able to feed their families or pay bills, etc. Because it's really not just for them, it's for everyone, right? They're changing this paradigm, making this paradigm shift so that the rest of the world can be part of this healthier way to eat and live and be, both for themselves and for the planet. So I think it would behoove everyone to be able to support something like this. So I'm really excited to hear that you're making your case, or that you're working to make your case towards there. Because I think we need to start somewhere, and building that foundation is integral, right? Otherwise you go there with half of what you need, and you really only get one shot to do something right. So what was the impetus for starting Think Regeneration after being in the media for so long?
Well, that answer might have answered itself. That question might have answered itself. No, just kidding. For everybody in the media, I still love you. It's a wonderful industry to be in, but it is challenging. The idea was real impact. As covering it is different than participating in it. And when I really thought about and when I was really working with these farmers and ranchers, there's something just deep inside me that said, I really want to take that next step and move behind the desk and get my hands dirty. And so that's really what I spent a couple years thinking about and talking to some trusted individuals about. And I think that's really kind of that's the space that I saw needed to be filling, is people that can help bring resources. Farmers and ranchers are so busy, and they've got so many diverse skill sets they already have to be so good at, that we can't really ask them to do a whole lot more, like go get grants from the USDA, or go learn how to become a soil scientist while you're doing all these other things. So we have the ability to bring those resources in. And I just saw that opportunity when I was with Acres, and the Acres community is just wonderful. And the Acres as a company is just wonderful. And they were very supportive of me just saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to go work for myself and figure out what we can do to propel this movement and take a leap.
Was that the moment, I guess, that you decided that this was really your passion and where you saw your future?
There was a real moment, and I was at an investment event as part of Acres USA. That was about a regenerative investment event, and I was there with a group of farmers and ranchers, and we heard a lot of the national brands and investment companies on stage talking about how much money they were going to make off regenerative agriculture. And the farmers and ranchers who I was sitting with were some of the early adopters, who were the only people in the room 6 or 7 years ago talking about this. And they got relegated to the back of the room, and they left pretty upset and angry. That was the moment I decided to start Think Regeneration. That was the moment that I knew that these folks are fundamentally need the support to lead this movement. They're the best to lead this movement. They have to lead this movement, and we've got to make sure that they don't lose their place.
That's admirable. That's
admirable. We'll see if we can get it done. But and it is about collaboration, not conflict. But we do want to work with those big brands. We just want to make sure that they understand how talented and smart these farmers are and ranchers are, and how much they can help them.
Well, I think that in the past, many times people were trying to do the best that they could, get the best deal that they could. Everything was about what is the cheapest way to do things, right? And I think there's a paradigm shift even in that, in people, demanding the right pay and feeling like we want to compensate appropriately. Everybody's in a different budget category when you have a startup and a new business, but I think people do want to collaborate. They do want to, pay for the better ways to do things. And I think that because of this shift, and I don't know if it's pre versus post COVID, the pandemic or whatever, but I just see it on a variety of levels where that has changed for people.
I think COVID had something to do with it. We certainly saw the food supply get disrupted. We certainly saw the grocery store shelves get empty. It was certainly resilience was certainly not the term that I would describe our country. So we got exposed a little bit, right, when that hit. And so I think that's really we can talk about this movement through a national sovereignty and security lens. Absolutely, we can talk about owning our food supply, making sure that we have enough food for all of our citizens at all times, and that we have abundance, again, as the goal of our food supply, not scarcity. It may seem challenging to the traditional capitalist mindset, and I'm not saying let's upend capitalism, but we can attach good values to capitalism, right?
Right.
And we
I
can
will tell you, our tagline is "Eating right is a human right." So
I love it. That it feels fundamental, right? You know
Right.
that, and I'd say it's not even just a human right; it's an all living thing right. Like
Yeah.
the wildlife deserve to eat well too, and
Totally
it's
agree. Totally agree. So as you're moving forward on this and you're providing resources to all these farmers and ranchers, and you're still new, what do you see? And I know you have big plans to help create a foundation so that you can help, change policy, et cetera. But what do you see happening in the next few years? What do you perceive as some of the biggest challenges you're going to experience that you need to overcome in order to reach those goals?
a good question. We're lucky that we've had really strong early support as an organization and have been able to get 5 programs off the ground in 6 months. We don't probably see us expanding too much beyond that because of our current funding and finance level ultimately and program support. So as we get more funding and programs, our goal is to really have a project in every county in the long run in the United States. Is that we really fundamentally believe that every county needs to have a regenerative farm education hub, a regenerative farm practice center, a regenerative farm. I mean, conservation in districts in certain pockets of the country are already doing this. That's a long ways away from what we can accomplish now, and that's what we're asking. Is when we fundraise and when we go out and talk to investor groups, is to say, if you're really interested in supporting these, we have all sorts of access and ability to participate in this movement. And we would just love to, if anybody's interested, to reach out to me, and we'll figure out a way. It might be helping us, it might be helping others in the industry, but there are so many folks on the ground doing this, taking on the risk and taking on the financial risk. And so we do need philanthropic support to make this movement happen. So that's our biggest concern right now, is long-term sustainability, right?
Well,
So
given that, how would folks reach out to you if they wanted to discuss this with you or support you or learn more?
Well, I appreciate that. You can go to thinkregeneration.com and our website. We have a contact us page. You can contact me through that page. If I will give everybody my cell phone, 970-389-5218. Call me. Again, abundance is the idea. Let's connect. Let's figure out how we can help each other.
I love what you're doing, your mission, your overall agenda, and I say agenda in a positive way. And we're here to support in any way we can.
Well, you're doing I really appreciate the chance to reach your audience, and we really respect we had some friends on this podcast before, so we're really honored to have the chance.
So for those folks that joined in today, thanks again for tuning in. And do you guys have any social they could follow just to keep up on what's going on?
Yes, you can. LinkedIn is our most active channel. So if you're on LinkedIn, go find Think Regeneration on there. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be starting an Instagram channel at some point this year. So we're still growing into our channels at this point, but come find us. We also have a newsletter that we send out every Tuesday. You can sign up on our website and get an email that just explains some about our programs. And we also do regular research reports to share the new research and information out with leaders like yourself who are listening.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again for joining us, and we will talk soon. Keep us posted on how things progress, and we'll bring you back so that we can continue this conversation.
That would be amazing.
Awesome. To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.